Hello my friends, LaRuffa here with another straight up solo, and in this episode we're going to take a look at the expansion to Honey Buzz, the Fall Flavors expansion. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay folks, and as usual, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. If you have, I do really appreciate that support. Thank you very much. So this expansion adds a whole bunch of different modules to the game, okay? So the first thing is, if you're playing with this expansion, you need to use this little time tracker and this key to determine when the game is going to end, okay? So if any of these things happen, you move the time tracker down several spaces or one space, and when it gets to the end, it will trigger the last turn, and if it's your turn, that's it. If it's the AI's turn, then you get to take one more turn. That's the first thing. You always have to play that no matter what module you do. The other thing you have in this game is this module here that lets you retire workers for these instant bonus cards or to take another decree action. And each of these bonus cards gives you some point depending on what you've got. So for this one says, 2 points per honey you have in your hive, or 3 points per worker in your tallest bee line, etc. And so you've got all these different conditions. There's a whole bunch of them that can come up, that if you want to retire a worker, meaning you take a worker from your home spot that's available and put it over here at the end of the game, you'll be able to take a one-time bonus action to score points or a decree action. Then there's a module that lets you cap your nectar. So that's what these little things are right here. When you take this space action, this one right here, you can either take the $5 or you can select the nectar tile and you put it on any one of your nectars and you cap that off, and it does not produce for the rest of the game, but it's worth 10 or 7 or 5 points. Then there's another module that puts leaves on these tiles like this. And basically what you do is you look at this and you compare it to some type of leaf card. And this is a little tricky and kind of goofy in the rules. So there are 3 of these for the solo contest, okay? These are not the foliage cards that come in the base game. These are the ones for the solo contest. So you have to include them, but the rules don't make that 100% clear. The designer chimed in to talk to me about it and say, yeah, they come in here, but I still didn't understand if it was now I have to have 5 different decrees out or 4 or what the story was. With this game, when you play solo, you are supposed to add 1 solo decree card to the others that are there. But all these solo decree cards have a negative point value balancing out your total score at the end to account for the fact that you're going to score potentially more points with the expansion. And you still use 3 of them for the game too. So it's a little bit of a head scratcher. And then the biggest thing, I would say not the biggest thing, because this is actually a smaller thing. The biggest thing I think is the worker one, but is that you can do fruit now instead of nectar. And so when you're moving around this area, if you're next to or on top of one of these fruit symbols, when you go to produce, you can produce it, and you can, I'm sorry, not when you go to produce. When you go to do the flower one, I can't remember, forage. Instead of getting one of these forage tiles, you get one of the fruits. You can put it over here. It's not when you produce, it's when you do the forage action. And you use the fruit either to sell it like you used to a nectar in the other game, or to fulfill new orders. And the new orders in this game, come with another space, i.e. now you can use a decree action if you do it. And so those are the main things that you get in this module. And they all seem to work together, and they all seem to work together just fine if you want to play with every single one of them, like I just did in my game, to throw them all in and really dial up the choices, the complexity, the things to take care of, all that stuff. You can put them all in. You can put them all in your first game after you know the base game fairly well, and be okay. There's a lot more to consider when you do that, but it's totally possible, and it doesn't seem too overwhelming. So there's a lot of variety that you get within the expansion, and you can use it all solo. It's totally okay. But I will say that it is, like I said, a little bit confusing in how some of the stuff works from a solo standpoint. It would be nice to get a little bit of an FAQ on there. For instance, and this maybe doesn't have anything to do with solo, maybe it just has to do with these orders. Let's say I ran into this problem. I'm trying to camp up some of these nectars, but at the end of the game, I have to have nectars of 3 nectars of any one type. So does that mean that they still count when I cap them? Or does that mean that when they're capped, they're effectively off my board? I don't know. A little bit of clarification like that wouldn't be a bad thing. And if I missed that, I deeply apologize, but I looked several times in the rule book. I couldn't quite find it. after trying to solve that question. So let me tell you what I think about the expansion, what it does for the base game. So Fall Flavors is one of those expansions that adds a whole bunch of different modules like I showed you, and they can all be used with the solo player, which I really appreciate. I like that a lot. What I think it does for this particular base game is it gives you much more variety and much more staying power for this game in your collection. I already like the mechanics of this game. There's no doubt about it. I really enjoyed it. I like the puzzly nature of moving building your hive in such a way that it's going to activate the right things at the right time. But I appreciate the enhanced decision space that you get from the expansion. For instance, not only do I have to get the right tiles that I'm trying to do, but I want to get ones with leaves. And sometimes I really, there's 2 leaf tiles versus 1. They may fill my set collection. They might be something that would help me with some of my scoring conditions, at the end. And so I think that's very good. I also still like the total pressure of having to get a certain number of decree points, so to speak, or contest points before you can even qualify for a win. I think that's important. I did in this game I just played qualify for a win on the 2nd level, but if I'd been in the 3rd level, I wouldn't have gotten it. And so I like the fact that it puts pressure on you to not just do everything, in a willy-nilly way. You really have to work at some of these goals, and some of them are very difficult to work at the same time with others. And so I still really appreciate that, and I like how the Fall Flavors expansion kind of took that up a notch by adding more things that I have to be considerate of and more things to think about that are interesting choices. So overall, I think it's a really good expansion. Of the order of things that I think is the best about it, I actually think that from a gameplay standpoint, my favorite things are the toast party, the retirement, the festival. I think that's cool. I think it's cool to limit your workers, but really what I think is cool is it's not just so much limiting the workers, but it's trying to maximize a goal before the solo player takes that card away from you. And you do have choices. Whenever he takes a card, you get to choose which one you want, but those could be some pretty good point values, very strong. And so, yeah, you're taking a worker out of circulation, but you're also trying to gun for something specific, which I think is cool. It adds some tension and it adds some pressure. The other thing is I do like the fact that I can retire workers, especially at the end when I feel like I have a lot of workers, in order to take a decree action and do something specific that I didn't have quite planned out well enough in my hive. So I like that ability too. I think it adds to the tactical options you have in this game. And then the leaves, I think, are my second favorite because when I have to work at doing that, it makes the tile choices even more interesting than they already are, because I need to now either collect sets, complete certain leaves. It puts a pressure on me like, boy, I need this drone to move so I can get to that leaf. But the drones also take leaves away, so they cycle things through as well, which I think is cool. And so those are my 2 favorite. Now, the fall fruit looks nice and everything else, but it's just more order fulfillment. All it really did was take the foraging board and make it more hexagonal and give you a little bit more element of space there, and take the nectar and make it into contracts. It was fine. It's okay. It's not a big deal, but it to me didn't seem like that much of a change from the base game to that. And if that was the only thing in the expansion, I'd be very disappointed. But the other 2 I really liked. And the nectar caps are okay. They're all right. Again, it puts pressure on. I'm not going to be able to use this again. But I also didn't feel like I was struggling because I was producing so many. I was trying to make so many nectar tiles with the goals I had that I could cap some off, and it wasn't a big deal. But it did make it so that I needed to, give up the 5 points, so to speak, on the nectar action to take that instead. So there was some pressure, but that was also kind of minor, I think. So overall, I still think this expansion is worth checking out, especially if you like this game. If you don't like the game, it's not going to change your mind. If you thought you played enough of the game and you're kind of teetering, like I've kind of got pretty samey, this can, I think, keep it going for longer. And that's where I rule in on this thing. So it just depends on where you are with the base game. And if you have not the base game and don't have fall flavors and you see them both on the shelf, I'd probably buy both of them right away if you think you're going to like the base game, because you can easily just thread in some of the expansion content a little bit at a time, not be overwhelmed, and enjoy the variety and the customization of the game. So that's what I think about it. Hopefully that was helpful for you. Thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate that support and all the good comments. They're a lot of fun. It makes gaming solo a lot more fun when you guys are interacting with these. So thank you very much. And as I always say, please, whatever you do in the future, I hope you have a fantastic time doing it. So take it easy.